Welcome to the Circle Sessions featuring the Circle of Experts. The Circle of Experts are Yasmin Robles from Robles Designs, Tonnisha English-Amamoo of TJE Communications, and Don the Idea Guy. I'm Brett Johnson from Circle 270 Media, podcast consultants. Each week, one of the Circle of Experts joins me to talk about some critical aspects of growing your podcast. We focus on marketing, social media, monetization, and website design to help you implement all of these together. This week, Tonnisha is here from the Circle of Experts. She is on a mission to help small businesses level the playing field through digital marketing solutions. Thanks for joining me again today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I have bantered around this this concept as well, and I've never really done a deep dive into explaining it or really talking about it until the conversation gets into it. Now, what we're talking about is content pillars. And this may sounds like content pillars. Oh my gosh, am I building a house or a front porch?
Right.
But we, and you brought it up to me before we were recording. She's like, this is something we talk about a lot. We mention this, we say this term, but do we really know what it means? Is the listener kind of getting what do you mean by content pillars? So let's go into that. Let's get your explanation, your definition of what you mean by it, and then we'll dig deeper into what content pillars can do.
Yeah, so I like what you just said actually about content pillars being like building a house, right? So you have this house of your social media or email, whatever it is, but each room has its own functionality. So you have a kitchen so you can cook, and a bedroom so you can sleep. So content pillars are essentially themes. So if you think about when people post like, hey, it's Motivational Monday or Man Crush Monday, Workout Wednesday, Throwback Thursday, like those are some like super basic, content pillars or themes. And the reason why we do that is one, to like those kinds of things are to help with engagement. And then also, as you being your content creator, or if you have a content creator, it helps to kind of focus the brain when we're creating content. Because content is really anything and everything. Even right now, of course, this podcast is a piece of content, but if I had someone here getting some behind the scenes content of me recording with you while I got my little one here giving her snacks, like that's also content. So I understand how and why people can get super overwhelmed when you hear I have to create content. So content pillars allows you to really just have a focus on these are my content pillars, and this is the type of content I will create under those pillars. Just makes it a lot easier and digestible as you are working through your marketing strategy.
Yeah, I like your examples right off the bat of that, themed days. Okay, that's a really easy way to explain it initially. That it's that, okay, you work around that day that has that kind of theme. You don't veer from it. That is the pillar, and that's the expectation of the viewer, listener, or the customer, whatever it might be, and you work around it. But you can expand on that. You can do some backdoor kind of feels to it, but it's that, but it's still based around that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday theme, whatever it might be.
Right.
So, but then we talk about some content pillars, building up content that you do, podcast, video, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Let's dive into that in regards to what that looks like in a long form.
Yeah, I have a few examples, and I know we always talk about true crime, guys. So we're going to use Crime Junkies, which is a podcast I listen to, as an example, because they do a really great job with their content pillars and just building up their social media. So the first content pillar that you all should have, number one, if you don't have any, is to tell people to subscribe to your podcast. I know it can be a little awkward sometimes to promote ourselves, but we definitely have to make sure we're doing that. So a few ways that you can do that is to tell people where they can subscribe. So if you have a YouTube channel, or if you have like a standing podcast page that has all the different, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, whatever, you have to tell people not only to subscribe, but different ways that they can subscribe to get that information. So that's definitely number one. And, with Crime Junkies, they do this in a very subtle way by, posting a picture of like, a screenshot, like, hey, we have a new episode. Here's how you can listen to it. Here's how you can subscribe. So that's one content pillar that's super easy that we all can do. Another one that Crime Junkies does that I really enjoy is that they have deeper discussion about the topic. So, of course, this is a true crime podcast. So, they will dive deeper into the victims that they're speaking of. So, they may show you, a picture of them and give some background of who they were or what they were like. If there is a foundation or people are seeking donations or information about the case that they're speaking about, they're sharing that information, which essentially is promoting the podcast. So for you as a podcaster, let's say you have a conversation or you have a podcast about cooking, and maybe you talk about your, favorite dish. Maybe a deeper discussion about a podcast episode could be, why you use the ingredients that you use. Are they sourced from somewhere that you feel is better or better for the environment, better for the community? Are there different like cooking tools that you use and why? Like, for example, I have this new, have you ever seen these? So this is like for, okay,
No.
I have dishes right here. So you can buy these like pots and
Okay.
pans
Okay.
and they have these on them. So as
Oh.
you're cooking, you can go from like one pot or pan to the next and without having all these handles in the way while you're cooking.
So
And then also,
detachable handle for those that are listening and not
yes,
watching the video, but you can
sorry,
watch the
yes,
video and see
detachable
what you're talking about.
handles.
Yeah, I love it. Oh my
and
gosh.
and also when you are storing food, if you're like me, I'm lazy and I don't
Yeah.
want to always transfer things over into like some Tupperware. I just put the whole thing in the fridge, but the handles take up space. So I can just click that handle off and stick it in the fridge, and then that's it, right?
I love that
So,
idea.
right,
Well, but what
yeah.
comes to mind is we're telling my daughter about this because I know her kitchen's kind of smaller in the apartment that they have, and there isn't a lot of
Yeah,
room for handles because the stove is
yeah.
the way it's positioned. It's like, I love that idea. Oh my
Yeah, it's
gosh. Yeah.
great. So I love it. And then also, if you have children like me who are moving around and they're
Yeah.
in the way and getting in my way, it also prevents, potentially someone knocking something over or pulling something down on them. So yeah, like if you
Yeah.
have a cooking, podcast, like that's something great to share with people.
Yeah.
So just think about, how can you create more conversation around whatever the topic is that you're talking about.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. Well,
Yeah,
and also if you think about it too, those little just as you did, and we didn't get paid for that little,
not at
3-minute
all. We just
advertisement for those,
promoted
the
that.
but it's that, but you can tag that company that you did
Yeah.
a 3-minute video on detachable handles
Mhm.
that those you can think about that too. That okay, those moments, can you
Yeah.
tag somebody within that? So, like you said,
Mhm.
that pillar of content could be around sustainable food production or something like that. Well, maybe there's certain
Right.
companies that do it really, really well, and you want to
Mhm.
kind of get in their lane of content. That's your perfect way to tag them and saying, "Hey, we talked about you in
Yeah.
this. We really appreciate what you do for our world,
Mhm.
and here's some. Please share if you'd like. We really appreciate what you do." So it's
Yeah, you
think
could
about
get
that
some
too.
brand deals or
Yeah,
sponsorships that way. So
right.
yeah, for
Right.
sure.
Yeah, on top of
Yes.
just saying and just thanking them in the world, going, "You're doing a great
Right.
job, and we're
Mhm.
spotlighting you for no other reason because you're doing a great job." Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. So another podcast pillar is what else are you up to outside of just recording the podcast? So, Going back to Crime Junkies, they made posts that they actually had a display in Times Square. If you have that, that's awesome. So share that. Or if sometimes Ashley Flowers, she's one of the co-hosts. If she's speaking at a conference or something, they're posting that content as well. If either of them are guests on another podcast, they're sharing that content also. So think about that. What else are you up to? And you can also share some behind the scenes. So as you're getting set up, you can share the setup and say, can you guys guess who we're interviewing today? This person is a 2-time NBA All-Star champion. Like you can, make it fun and get people engaged. And people love that kind of content too. Seeing the behind the scenes, how things are made. Just like, we talked about earlier with, you can hear the little one here in the background. Like that's a perfect, like behind the scenes content that can be shared on social media.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then lastly, I would suggest some user generated content. So, if you had for example, with Crime Junkies, I know that you can get merch from their podcasts and they have like stickers and hoodies and things like that. And they encourage people to take pictures, wearing their stuff. Or, I have seen them share content where like two strangers have just been like out and you randomly see another person with a Crime Junkies, sweater on, and they take a picture together and share it. So they reshare it on their social media. Just fun things like that. So you can encourage people to take a picture of themselves listening to the podcast and maybe sharing something that they learned. Or as you're out doing speaking engagements or meeting people, taking pictures with people and sharing that. So that is another low hanging fruit, getting user generated content. For some reason, myself included, it's cool when you're like reposted by a brand or something, or if you really love something and they're sharing you enjoying, the thing that they create. It's a lot of fun. So you can use that as a way to not only get content, but also build rapport with your audience too.
Yeah, it also showcases that you're making some impact.
Exactly.
That they care enough to spend a few minutes to record themselves doing it. Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of clients too that create some content pillars within their podcast that they use those. So you could look at it that way too. What came to mind was that one always asks about, who are your mentors? That sort of thing that they pull from their podcast and video casts. It's always that question they ask. Or one asks, what are your superpowers? What is your superpower?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then they use that to pull out and then use to promote the episode. And the hope is too that the guest will use it as well, because most people don't really shine that spotlight on themselves that I do this the great until someone asks them. And then because you don't really do that in your own podcast saying, hey, I'm the greatest at, but when someone asks you, it's kind of neat going, well, I was asked this and I never thought about it. And I guess I am this, sort of thing. That you can be within too. Think about that.
Yeah, and it can be something that is like maybe not even necessarily related to your podcast. Like for example, Crime Junkies, at least once a month, they have this thing called like Send Us the Good. Because, obviously their podcast is sad and dark and we're telling, sad stories, but they have a portion where they share a good story. And they share like a feel good story about something that happened and it's always something that's sent in from a listener. A listener will send in a feel good story. And that's, something that they share once a month on the podcast. And then they also, promote that on their social media. So it doesn't necessarily have to be related. If you have a business podcast, but you're a mom, maybe you also share like, hey, here's some advice right now because I have a teething infant, which I do right now. And let me tell you like something that has been working for us, not related to the business at all, but we're all human. And we all have probably had some interaction with children. So you can get that information and share it with somebody else, or it's just a way to also humanize yourself. Because if you're working in something like true crime, you know, that can be just super heavy. And it allows you to be able to take a step back and, be able to share something good, share something meaningful on the podcast. Or if you're a listener like me and you listen to a lot of true crime, I had to like take a break because it can feel like, okay, this is it's just so sad and just dark and draining. So it just allows people to take a step back and be grateful for what they have and the people in their lives, and also just create some engaging content for your podcast, for your audience.
I can imagine the hosts of Crime Junkies were looking for something for themselves, if nothing else. Like,
Yes.
talk about, you the listener on that X amount of time. Well, it took, 5-6 times that amount of time to create that episode. So they're deep into this.
Right. Lots of research and talking to the
Dehumanizing stuff. Oh
families.
my gosh. Yeah.
Mhm.
And again, it drives them. They love this stuff, of course,
Right.
but you've got to take a step back. And I think they probably realized that their audience does too. That there is good in the world. Let's showcase it. That all we are is looking at what did happen. We're not predicting or what anymore to happen. But yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, super. No, I think these are, really great ideas and good examples of, from a successful podcast or a podcast team. And I think anything you put together, it's that, I would look at it as what's easy to do and then start building it out. And then sometimes it just falls in your lap. It could be some of this stuff just fell in their lap. So, kind of take notice. Don't get the blinders off and kind of go, ooh, that would be good to add. Let's experiment and see if our audience, our customers, our clients, whatever, you're doing here, your listeners react and see what they'll do. If we can trigger them into submitting some things, but give it some time and experiment with it and see what happens. If it fails, it's okay.
That's totally fine. I mean, we talked about TikTok, and one thing that we kept emphasizing was that you don't own these spaces, and we have to constantly keep evolving. So experiment is the perfect word, because a platform can be here today and gone tomorrow. So what's the harm in just trying something new to get your audience engaged, get your listeners excited, and then hopefully grow your podcast, which would hopefully then grow revenue for you and your business. So why not give it a try?
Exactly. So you've come up with some really good ideas, great examples. How can the listener get a hold of you in regards to what you're helping your clients with, as well as ideas that you hear that, we can't all listen to the same podcasts or video casts and, for all these ideas? How can they get a hold of you to at least maybe do a brainstorming session just to kind of see where they could go with things?
Yeah, I offer free consultations every Tuesday. So you can go to tjecommunications.com and schedule a consultation. I'm also on all social media as TJE Com and Tonnisha English-Amamoo on LinkedIn.
Good, and they can also ask you about those the new kitchenware you have as well too. So the detachable. It's like I'll show them off. Exactly, I love it.
Yes,
I love it. And if you need to get a hold of me, I'm at at the website mypodcastguy.com. Let's talk about your podcast for your business or whatever you're doing with your podcast. If it's B2C, B2B, if it includes something like this, you need some ideas in regards to, hey, I want to do this, and this, but let's include some content pillars. We'll bring Tonnisha in as well too. The whole team, if we need to, with Circle Sessions, the Circle of Experts. That's what we're here for, is to help you get your podcast to where you want it to be, doing for your business, content marketing strategy, that sort of thing. Book a time on my calendar. It's at mypodcastguy.com. Tonnisha, thanks again. This was another great episode. Appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me.